Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry at the Movies. Today I'm not reviewing a movie, although I guess I will discuss cinema in terms of my topic here a little bit. But mostly, I'm doing something a little bit different. This coming Sunday marks the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And I thought I would talk briefly about my thoughts on that day, where I was. I don't know really why I'm doing this. I'm not sure too many people would care where Jerry at the Movies was on that day, because I was nowhere near the actual event, nor did I witness it, except on television, as most of America did, aside from the New Yorkers that were there, unfortunately, and other people that witnessed what happened, not to mention those who unfortunately passed on that were in the towers. The reason I bring this up is because it is a day that changed really everything. A lot of things have changed since 9/11. So I thought I'd briefly discuss it. On that day, I was living in East Windsor, New Jersey, in Heightstown, and I was home, or I was asleep, and I was staying with my father at that time, and I slept in the living room, which was essentially two big rooms, and we had a gateway computer in there, which also doubled as a television. It was a big monitor, the gateway computer that had it. It was a gateway monitor. So my father, unbeknownst to me, had left and came back from Target. And from what I remember, what he told me, he went into Target and someone at Target, one of the employees, said, "You know what's going on?" So he came back home. He was buying something, I think, for himself or for my brother. He came in the house and he turned on the TV. And again, this was in the living room, so of course I was awakened. I didn't know what was going on. You turn on the television, and there we see the two towers are smoldering, the World Trade Center towers. And at this point already, the second plane had hit the North or South Tower. I always forget, to be honest with you. And so I see this, and my first thought was that this was not a terrorist attack, but I didn't know what it was. I figured the planes were just on fire. I didn't know that something struck them until they started saying in the news report that something struck them. I think we were watching CNN. Now, I was always intimidated by the World Trade Center. Reason is because when I first moved to New York City, it was in 1980. And then my father, we came from Canada. I was originally from South America. So we came from Canada and lived in the city briefly. Then we were in Flushing, New York, and eventually Fresh Meadows, New York, and then Long Island, and so on. And I think in 1991 I left New York City, and then eventually I moved to New Mexico and stayed in New Jersey, and so on. But I was always intimidated by the World Trade Center. I saw these two towers, and I didn't want to get near them. I was always afraid they were going to fall. That's the real honest truth. So, I think one time I passed through the lobby. I never went up in those towers. My father used to work in them. He worked for Merrill Lynch. And obviously not on that day, because he was located at a Merrill Lynch branch in a town not far from where we lived. I forget the name of the town now. So not Hillsborough, I can't remember. But anyway, I was always intimidated by them, and I didn't want to get near them. And but they remained fresh in my memory. I always saw them. When I lived in Fresh Meadows, New York, especially, we were the third floor apartment. And the third floor was the highest floor, and you could see the World Trade Center from where we were. because we were only about 15 miles away from Manhattan, give or take. So to see this happening was just astonishing. And it did bother me for a number of weeks. Eventually I got past it, but it took a while. One of the things I remembered that, you talk about how there are changes. I think comedian Bill Maher said it didn't really change anything. Well, it did. That day changed a lot of things. But one of the things, since, this show is mostly about movies, I'll talk about this. When I went to this record store out in Princeton, New Jersey, they sold VHS tapes and DVDs and also LPs and so on. And I walked in there, and the VHS stuff was not brand new, obviously. It was just used copies that they would sell, previously used. And I looked, and I saw there was Die Hard and Die Hard 2 and Independence Day and all these movies that I imagine there were people who owned them who decided to get rid of them because of 9/11. That was my first thought, because why else would these be available for purchase suddenly, multiple copies of all these type of movies that were, in essence, disaster movies. That's what they were. That's when I recognized the change. And also, the skyline of New York. The way to identify New York City is by the World Trade Center. It wasn't the Chrysler Building, it wasn't the Empire State Building. It was the World Trade Center. That's how you knew you were in New York. It was like a marker. That and the Statue of Liberty. So, and ever since then, I thought, well, cinema is going to change in a strange way. We're not going to have movies like Independence Day anymore. We're not going to have these type of disaster type films. But lo and behold, right around 2004, we had The Day After Tomorrow, I believe it was called, which was about almost like a new ice age. I didn't see the film, but this is what I understand it's about. I haven't seen some of these. I did see Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds remake in 2005, which very much purposely recalled images of 9/11. And then there's John Cusack in 2012, and then you had J.J. Abrams with Cloverfield, with a monster attacking New York City, breaking down buildings, and Transformers. One of the Transformers transforms itself into a plane that hits a building. So it didn't really change cinema. I'm not saying you can't have these type of movies, but because there have been disaster movies. We had Irwin Allen disaster films, a long time ago. That was a big thing, Earthquake and the Poseidon Adventure and so on and so forth. But it's not to say these movies can't exist. It's just the timing is always crucial. Because a lot of, there were a few films that dealt with 9/11. Oliver Stone's World Trade Center, Paul Greengrass's film United 93. They're both very good films. The question was, when was the right time? And it's always hard to say, how do you deal with this? But that's when I realized 9/11 serves a certain kind of purpose, in the sense, or understanding 9/11 serves a purpose. And the purpose being that in art, you really need art. That's what I really realized. You need art. Any art form. It's a painting, a sculpture, a movie, a book, a Broadway play, a musical, whatever the hell it is, you need it. And the reason you need it is because you need stories that deal with things that you don't know how to quite articulate in your own lives. So it could be a romantic relationship. It could be a birth. It could be the death of somebody. It could be cancer. It could be anything in your life that you don't know quite how to put into words. You don't know how to articulate. That's the function of art. It's to help you articulate something. If the artist or the art piece, if you like, is doing that, if that's the purpose, That's the function. But I don't know if there's been a film that really dealt with 9/11 yet. I mean, I did mention World Trade Center and United 93, and those are very good films, but I don't know if any, I don't think there is a way to really cultivate the understanding of a calamity of that nature. We never really had such a tremendous calamity, a disaster like that ever in the history of the United States. The history of the world, even. I should say the world necessarily, but one such incident that is man-made. It was these terrorists did this. They created this calamity. It's different from a hurricane or any natural disaster. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about an actual bombing. Planes used as missiles. And of course, not just the World Trade Center, but Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the plane that crashed there, and the Pentagon. So you can't. And these were all on the East Coast, which I always found odd that this happened just in these three cities and so close to where I was. I was sort of like in the middle, wedged in between all this. One of the things I'll never forget about the days following 9/11 is you didn't hear any planes, not one in the sky, because they canceled flights. You couldn't have any planes in the sky at all. It was just, there is no words to put it in. So I'm doing this because I want to share my story, which again is not nearly as amazing as what other people have witnessed. And by amazing, I mean horrifying. People have been through a lot worse. There are survivors. There are all those stories. But I wanted to share this because I feel not to be closer to people on this channel, but to make them aware that even if you're not in the thick of it, you're still affected by it. I had nightmares about people falling from towers. I already had a fear of great heights, which is probably why I was never in the World Trade Center in the first place. And it's hard to shake those images. It took me some time. So, that's why I'm sharing this, and I don't know. I don't think it's going to serve any great function except to make one understand that even after 10 years, you could still get a little shaken by it. Yeah. But cinema did not really change. It just, you're seeing more of these type of films that deal with disasters. And maybe that is also a way for the audience to know how to deal with 9/11 in some strange way. Hard to say. Anyway, next time we'll do something a little more lighthearted. I'll actually review a movie, Machete. And I'm thinking in the future I'd like to also discuss films that feature the World Trade Center. All these films based in New York City prior to 9/11 that always showed the towers. I might do that in the future. I wouldn't do that right now, but eventually. But anyway, next time, Machete. And until then, this is Jerry to Movies, and that's a day of remembrance. 9/11, 10 years. It's been a very strange decade. So until then, keep all the survivors and the victims of this horrendous tragedy in your minds and in your hearts. Thank you. It's Jerry to Movies, signing off.